Okay. What if the universe is static, which is the idea of a universe as kind of a space is more or less illusory, kind of like maybe a glass jar or cup is made up of empty space because there is space between the atoms, or the molecules are technically, according to the materialist reductionist view, primarily. So what if space is kind of like a time crystal, or the universe, and it's got to be activated as such through your mind by creating the necessary connections within yourself. So we have the idea of this universe thing, and this is a solar system, but there's orbitals. It doesn't work that well. It kind of does, because anyway, there's orbitals, and they oscillate in a variety of movements, motions, cycles, and these relate to our consciousness, our stages of so-called evolution, however you want to look at this. Even your dreaming, the dreams you have, the personalities that develop in life, the people who are around you. And we think that these, when these happen to fall over here, we are like this. But in reality, it's more of like a clock where so does the clock say it's 3 o'clock with the big hand there, or even a digital clock? But it's kind of better with the better analogy with analogous version. Analog. That was weird. Twister. Is it saying it's 3 o'clock because the gears rotate around and that's what's happening, or is it saying because it is 3 o'clock in the day, the sun is at this angle and it's this many hours since sunrise, that it's saying that? Now, you can say, oh, clearly it's just saying it because it's aligned that way, because if I misalign it, it now says something different. Let me check to make sure this is recording. Yeah, it is. Okay. But then, so imagine if you have something that's so intrinsically secure, inherently secure, meaning its format is so accurate, you could say it's what's being measured in terms of the measurement of time as an abstraction. Now, an atomic clock comes to mind, or say your own brain, because it's the same process. Now, not according to time, but according to consciousness, in the sense that the universe you're perceiving is going to depend on the alignment within your own brain, your own mind, really. The brain is kind of a different aspect of that. Maybe it's a filtration system or processing. It handles the processing in other locales, if you will. But dependent on how well, let's say, you align yourself and your vision, is going to end up the degree of accuracy of the universe that you experience. And so now, does that mean that that universe is a product of your mind, or that your mind as a universal measurement tool is a product of how accurate you are in perceiving the universe? Don't think about it too long. So the idea, unless you get, anyway, the idea is, if we have this, that's solar system, so then you got a bunch of solar systems, if you will, but we'll start with one. I don't know why there's 3 planets on orbit. And so, say this is phasing in and out, kind of like the moon phases or something, but everything is kind of in a rotation. The moon phases kind of throw a sine wave in there, if you will, where everything's kind of oscillating more, kind of like it's a fractal shape, more or less. It's like a fractal, and you can count up the total fractal surface. I can't remember the terminology pattern for that. I'm running through it. And then with the moon, or with other technological aspects within that, we get this minor oscillation, and maybe this breaks down time even more and makes this kind of arraying cascade of extra time, or maybe it kind of produces a dysfunctional cascade, like a kind of diminishing returns of awareness within a uncontrollable or a unclosable fractal. And you can kind of see if we're phasing time that way, well, we're creating those oscillations in this big system, whatever this is, whether it's mind or projection or whatever. And so it's kind of like taking, I don't know, everything's already a fractal because it's already in oscillation, but it's more so smooth, if you will. So it's like taking that and say, by smooth, I mean you have a planetary orbit there or some orbit there, or stars, whatever. And the orbits don't necessarily cross and like go way out of whack and do crazy stuff. They kind of just oscillate within themselves, kind of like electron orbits or something. So then if you have consciousness going up and down so much, but it doesn't match these overall systems, what we result in, our experience, is going to be in disarray. It's going to be at an abstraction compared to what's happening here. And if there's this big occurrence that's taking place here, it means it's basically missed out by the consciousness that are in there. They're out of phase, kind of like they're using half of the frame rate on the TV screen at a time, and so the rest of it is static, blank, or some other reality, or garbled reality. And the brain is kind of like that processing system for that. And so the idea, to break it down in simple terms, you could see how adding those things to it, which is kind of a tangent I went on, it changes the structure of that so that the information it could be chaotic, or it could be definitively controlled, or relatively definitively, to the point where you get this physical projection that kind of plays out over time, and you can more or less control time, add time, and not have infinite time, because again, if your psychology is according to something either beyond here, and then this is trapping it because it's a kind of like a bad step down filtration system, the algorithm won't, like I said, add up ultimately to where we're supposed to be, and it kind of doesn't. That's like, I don't know, it's like having a half self-awareness or something, or partial. It just doesn't mean that it's not whole. You can't have partial and whole unless they're formatted properly. Let me slow down here, and so we could end up with that system, but we'd have to slowly match it to what's happening in reality. It's really abstract talking about this, because you can imagine if we're in a system that wasn't modified and we modified our solar system, if it's 1 million years ago, we really don't know at all how it could have changed things. It could have thrown those oscillations off, so our brainwave collectively went into a different state of projection and mapped out a different hyperbolic temporal universe, a potential field, which could have introduced all kinds of stuff that we would have no way of seeing. And that's where you would have, if there was a trend of changing things, it would have to be so controlled that it didn't go into nothing and disappear, or expand out into infinity and basically act like a supernova that has to be started over again. That's infinite phasing over, like somebody's flashing a light bulb in your face and you can't calm down enough and relax the eye muscles to calibrate and see the contrast in the dark. And then the other way is basically you're there and somebody's shutting off the TV real quick and it's fading to black over and over and over again in an infinite cycle. It doesn't matter if it takes 2 seconds or not, and they stretched out 1 million years in between them. If we modified our systems, that's pretty much how it's going to look from the larger perspective. And then within each phase, a whole bunch of stuff has to go on from people in the system, and people could potentially be outside the system in order to realign the consciousness of the individuals that are in there, because that might be the interface that occurs that enables the collective as a whole to integrate into what we call the accurate universe, based upon more or less the opportunities we have. So I went a few different directions here. Let me see if I can do it one simple time, which is more or less you have the universe, say it's a fractal, not a Sierpinski, but something's going on. And it's equivalent and symmetrical and balanced, and it's complex and so on. And so, and it's expansive, it can do anything. Okay, and so then when we are here, we're in a physical form that's more or less limited, and sorry for the stick figure. And so what we're doing in life, more or less, it's not that it has to remind us of who we are in the end. It's that it's as if we can create an outline of who we are here, that with this life that doesn't fit into the larger set of information that exists, possibly as us or as our potential in the universe. And if that's our potential, then it means in a static universe where nothing more or less can be changed, to realize who we are here and now, we would have to achieve maximum potential, realization or activation. In that way, I don't think it's physical in that I think it's a combination that our body has to be basically strong enough to handle a type of energetic shift, which is just kind of like saying you can handle a hiccup or something, but then there has to be a resonal or a tonal resonance in the system, and that's the true health. That it's not, can you like do a 1-inch punch? It's, can you sustain a vibratory resonance within your system, between your mind and your body, for an extended period of time? And that's kind of like a conductive system, as well as your ability to focus in your brain, your mind, and as well a whole body effect in the system, or process. And so then having our body, mind, whatever you want to call it, meet that potential would have to it's confusing to say it, but you could say I don't know why he's big feet now, your view of the universe, if you have in yourself the universe and its imbalance is like that, and then it's heavier on this side and whatnot, trying to merge that into this universe would be like cracking this into pieces and forcing it to stretch out and interface and interplay with the larger system. And it wouldn't work in that sense. And so then it's kind of hard to say it, but more or less the goal is, if in this theory, if you will, or this interpretation, to achieve the most accurate view of the self with the most expanse, but it's just simply accurate. But in the same sense where there's like a fractal and you got multiple layers, that could be confused for expanse, where you're just like making it bigger and repeating the same thing over and over again. And that's kind of like our materialist reductionist error, where it's not about size, it's not about the space in between atoms and the weight of the universe. It's the organizational properties of a system that's static and remains static for all of time, but is viewed through a brain interface that breaks the universe down from basically the highest format that it exists as, and gives us either a mind F or a challenge to rebuild our view of ourselves, and more so our universe through our view of ourselves, to match that utmost highest possible value. And in that sense, when we then go and see what we've done and what we've created, it could be like something that we appreciate and have achieved and continue to achieve union with and within, maybe possibly as a realm, after or through this human life experience, which could say it's also simultaneously occurring once we realize it, once we get to the level where we can realize it and understand that it's always been occurring. And in that sense, it's kind of like this, not retrocausal, but it's like an unfolding or unfurling to the point where the core of what was already and always was happening turns out to be the exact same thing as that eternal huge universe. And what we kind of have here as ourselves is some type of strange cookie cutter outline of what we aren't, that kind of in a way falls away to reveal to us the true depth of what we've always been. That was the weirdest way I could say it. And it basically is supposed to be time crystals that don't change, that we readjust and recalibrate ourselves in order to unlock and gain access to. But I guess that'll do. Thank you. Oh no, don't cancel.